What's up, guys? We're back with another NECA Turtles review, taking a look at a new deluxe cartoon figure. So of course we're talking Target exclusive, but before we even get to anything, I am going to mention that this guy did come to me from eBay, from China, because of whatever in the world is going on, allowing this stuff to get out early. So we're taking a look at Volume 4 in the deluxe set, and that would of course be Muckman. These guys have been kind of out of order. Mondo was the one that hit me first. He's Volume 5. The Ultimate Foot is 3, and this guy is Volume 4. He is probably the one I've been most looking forward to, though, because I really like Muckman. This isn't my preferred look or version of him, but I really like the character. He's got a little buddy, and that's always been a big thing for Turtles with me, so I'm really excited to take a look at this guy. Of course, being in a deluxe format, this guy has an Ultimate style box, so you've got a big shot of cartoon style artwork of him on the front there with the Turtles in the background. We've got our NECA FHE VHS style logo. You've just got nameplate and kind of line information on the side panels. The back of the box has a shot of Irma with Joe Eyeball and then a handful of product shots, and he also gets a bio on this single deluxe release. Of course, being in an Ultimate style box, he does get the window treatment, so you've got a big product shot here on the inside flap, and then you've got the window over here with his rather enormous figure, I must say, with Joe Eyeball up there peeking through the corner. And yeah, this guy looks pretty interesting, so let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our deluxe Muckman figure. So again, one of my more anticipated figures, a figure that I really liked as a kid when it came to the vintage line. You know, he had a little buddy, he had Joe Eyeball, so he already got a few notches up on the list just because he came with that, and it's more of the same here. This is, again, not my preferred version of Muckman. I mean, you know, we've got the vintage figure, and that particular look was always so much grosser. It had the hole in the chest. It had the ooze sort of hole that sort of allowed everything to seep through him. But there is something about this guy that I still really like. He's just not the same. It's one of those instances where you're going to like one particular version over the other because while they're similar, they aren't exactly the same. But I can appreciate both because this guy is really, really gross for the cartoon, and I always like some of that. So let's see what this guy can do, see how he moves around. He's pretty familiar territory when it comes to articulation. He is surprisingly a little bit more mobile than I expected because of some of, you know, his more interesting extremities down there. You know, he's got the crazy manhole cover foot and everything. But as far as the head goes, he can look up a little bit. He's one of those characters that are kind of hunched over. He's not like super hunched, but he has a little bit of a hunch to him. So his head is actually facing forward. It's not exactly just that he's looking forward. It is sort of lurched forward a bit. So he looks up before he hits his, you know, back. He can't really look down. There is a little bit of bobble side to side, and then you do have some rotation, but not a lot. He starts to hit his shoulders and vest, but honestly, it's again one of those things where if you tilted it too far, his head would just be sort of crooked sideways, which doesn't work anyway. You've got arms that go out at the shoulder. They, of course, will rotate in there. You can get him to go all the way, but it wants to sort of fight because of the jacket vest piece. You've got a bicep swivel there. Mine are pretty tight. It's like the one area on this figure that are tighter than I expected, but it's not really a problem. You've got double jointed elbows. They go about that far. Pretty good range for the bulk that he has. And then we've got hinges. You've got lateral hinges and rotation at the wrist. He has a diaphragm cut, and I'm going to urge caution because, you know, some of this stuff is attached. So he's got, you know, like this piece here. He's got the apple core. Just sort of watch when you're moving them. So you can swivel side to side there. You got a little bit of tilt, but not much. Not really any crunch, though. It doesn't really do anything for that. And then you do have your waist twist down there. Legs, they go out about this far. It is the new hip design. So you've got the ball socket situation going on. Legs go forward about that far. They kick backwards slightly. He does have a sort of diaper thing going on, so it covers him a little bit. You do have a little bit of twist in there, and you can, you know, if you twist too hard, you're going to pop those legs out. But again, it's just the ball and socket, so no big deal. He's got double jointed knees. They go back well enough. Again, he is kind of tree trunk leg kind of guy, so it's not too unsurprising that he doesn't have tons of range, but it's good enough, I believe, for this kind of figure. And then down at those ankles, I mean, he has a surprising amount of articulation. So this one goes forward and backward a little bit. But look at this rocker. I mean, this rocker is pretty ridiculous for a big manhole cover that he has down there. This foot is, of course, different, but it's got crazy range there. And the ankle hinge on this one goes way, way far back. I mean, that's super crazy. And then it goes forward a good bit. So he does move pretty well. I mean, he is going to be kind of weird and different to pose no matter what because of this foot. I don't really think there's any way around it, but otherwise he is very par for the course with this line. There's really nothing else that's a surprise here. Arms, torso, the hips, all of that is pretty normal. He's very, very much the same like we would expect to see across the board, but he does have some surprisingly good articulation down at those ankles. He's really only hindered on this one when it comes to the hinge, but otherwise I don't find too many issues with this guy. He moves pretty well. Now, as far as aesthetics go, that is probably where, well, I don't know, not probably, it's likely where everybody's interest lies, because that's what this line is really focused on. It's the looks, this particular art style, this particular direction for things. And regardless of whether or not this is your preferred version of Muckman, like I said, I really stick to that Playmates vintage figure. It's just what I prefer. This absolutely nails the look for the cartoon, and I think they did a really good job. This is one of those instances where it speaks to NECA's attention to detail on some of this stuff, because you do get a lot of those weird, goofy things that are sort of thrown in. You know, like you've got the mirror that's in his torso. You've got, you know, the apple core there. We've got the flowers. You've got the banana peel that's on the head, the bugs that are all over him. And I mean, of course, the fact that this dude was a garbage man in real life meant that he had to turn into a walking pile of just junk, basically, and trash. But I think it works really well when it comes to making a goofy, crazy-looking figure. And I'm really happy with his overall design and just the way he translates into figure form. Of course, the colors on this particular figure aren't all that crazy. Like, it's orange and it's green, but it clashes really well, so it stands out amongst itself. So you've got, of course, I'm going to say it like I do every single time, you've got that bisected design, so he's cut right down the middle, dark on the back, light on the front. You know, it's a few shades different, but I really, really like the way this guy translated into plastic. The absolute full coverage of paint on this figure, of course, helps to sell that, because there is a sort of matte finish across the figure. The different shades of green there do help to sort of pop a little bit. So like that flower is a little bit lighter, and then you've got some goop and some ooze on his stomach. You've got these sort of canisters down here on his ankles. You've got this sort of can down here. And then, of course, the asymmetrical design, which I do tend to just love when it comes to figures, especially when it's something like this. So it's a noticeable change on the figure. Every side of this figure is very different. You know, the arms aren't just mirrors of each other, but this particular foot is wacky and goofy and disgusting, and he has a manhole cover for a foot. So it's unique, it's different, and it works really well as this sort of disgusting action figure. He does have a slot on his back for a trash can, which we will talk about when we get to accessories. So there is a way to attach everybody's favorite Joe Eyeball onto him. But I think as far as the base figure goes, I think NECA really did a good job, especially with the head sculpt. Again, it's another thing where I prefer the vintage figure, but this is what this dude looked like in the show. Bar none. He looked like him. He's got the bug on his head. He's got the clothespin over his nose, and those sunken in eyes with that sort of off green yellow color work really well. His mouth is freaky. I don't know what's going on with his mouth. It's an odd shape. It's an odd look, but it works really well. And I mean, the whole idea of just selling that this guy is a, you know, jiggling mass of ooze works really well with all the lumps and the nastiness all over his face, all the way down to his feet, and you've got these sort of droplets that run down the hands. So yeah, he looks like the cartoon version of Muckman, and it may not be the one that everybody immediately goes to, because I know there's been a lot of chatter on this particular figure of, well, he's not the cool version, it's the one that from the cartoon. Well, it's the one from the cartoon, and I'll be damned if he doesn't look exactly like that. He looks like he jumped right out of the screen, and I'm really, really happy with this particular version. And then, of course, we have to talk about some size comparisons. So let's start outside of the line first. So we've got a smaller scale figure here on the left. So, you know, it's a Figure Arts Goku, 6-ish inches, sort of, but not really. You know, they skew smaller. And then we've got a normal 6-inch style figure with the classified Major Blood. And you can see that he's got some size to him. He's very beefy. He's very robust. We'll move him aside and do Laughing Prince Adam for a actual 7-inch scale figure, someone who is a little bit larger, but not necessarily as beefy. So you can see that he's taller, but he's not as big of a figure overall, if that makes sense. And then we'll move Goku aside. And here is the recent Leo, so the disguised Leo. Of course, he is not in disguise. And we'll go with another bigger figure from Turtles. So here is Bebop, just to give you an idea of what he looks like with other figures in the line. So Leo is absolutely dwarfed in every capacity, and then Bebop, I think they're pretty evenly matched. For the most part, they're very similar, although I do think Muckman does seem to have a little bit more mass on him overall. He's a very thick, beefy figure overall, but he's going to look really good alongside, I don't know, pretty much all the villains. So, Leatherhead, Trag, Granitor, Bebop, Rocksteady, etc. All that kind of stuff. Throw him with Android Krang or whatever. Because he's not, he's a bad guy, but then he's not. So you can throw him, you kind of mix and match depending on what you're doing with him. So he is a pretty big figure. He is very much par for the course when it comes to, I don't know, anything that's not a turtle really in this line, save for, say, Mondo Gecko and Slash. Now, as far as accessories goes, Muckman is pretty well stacked, pretty much across the board. He comes with some stuff that I really, really like when it comes to Turtles. He also comes with a few referential things, and then he's also got an accessory that's really not even meant for him, which is always something that I like to see when NECA is able to sort of sneak stuff in for other characters who otherwise couldn't get an accessory, for cost reasons. So to start with, we do get an extra mouth for this guy, and I will say that getting this out may take a little work. I had to kind of pry this out, so it's already kind of half out. But you kind of like shimmy that out and you get this sort of horror show underneath where he's got this just hole in his face, and you can pop in this mouth in its place, which is him just sort of, open mouth, a little bit more scowling, a little bit angrier, maybe one that you would use in sort of like an action scene or something like that. So it's not an extra head sculpt or anything, but it is an extra mouth, which basically accomplishes the same goal, I think. We do get some extra hands. So he's got these sort of style pose gripping hands on him in the box. You get a singular right hand trigger finger hand, because he does come with a gun, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you get a singular left-hand gripping hand. So there are no fists or anything like that, and he doesn't have 2 trigger fingers or 2 gripping. It's one of each. I kind of wish he had some fists, but this is pretty decent overall. He does come with some more very specific things, and of course my favorite accessories are his trash can backpack. So it sits on his back like that, and there's like a little notch that goes in there. I am kind of concerned about this because, as with a lot of this kind of stuff, it's kind of brittle plastic, and that's a really, really tight fit for this. Like, I don't even think it's fully in there, honestly. Like, it just doesn't want to go all the way in, so be careful. Your mileage may vary on how well that works or not, but it's a trash can, and see, it just sort of pops right out really easily. So, it's in there, but I'm worried that too much messing with it might snap it off, so be careful. But the star of the show is the fact that we get Joe Eyeball, and of course he can fit in the trash can backpack, and you've always got him sort of peeking around over the shoulder there. But this guy does have some articulation on him too. He's got articulated arms, so they swivel, and they hinge at the, well, he's got the arms and then he's got the tendrils, but they hinge at the arms, and the head is on a ball peg, so it can swivel around and all that. But I mean, look at this guy. He is pretty fantastic. I'm really happy with this guy. Like I said, turtle buddies were always a big thing for me as a kid in the vintage line. Pretty much any figure that has a buddy gets put at the top of the list. You're already there, so that means Muckman is instantly like a favorite vintage figure of mine. A lot of it has to do with Joe Eyeball, and I think this is probably one of the best interpretations of him ever. Not that we have really any, but this is a really nicely done piece. The colors are bright and vibrant. The sculpt is fantastic, and I really like the asymmetrical design they've got going on with those eyeballs. So he looks fantastic. I'm really, really happy with him. He kind of steals the show for me in many ways because, again, I personally have a lot of nostalgia for that kind of stuff. And then, like I mentioned, he does come with a gun, and that's what the trigger finger hand is for, but Muckman's not really a gun guy. He's not really meant to use this. This gun is actually meant for General Trag. This is the Rockalizer. So this is a Dimension X weapon. Krang uses it in the episode that it's featured in, and then General Trag is like commissioned to do something or other to take control of all the minerals in New York City or whatever in the world this gun does. But it's a very specific design, so it's quite obviously this particular gun. I mean, they don't exactly tell us that or anything, but that's what it is. It's got that sort of coil shape on the barrel, and just the overall design, it's 100% the Rockalizer. So they used the ability to throw this in with Muckman to give General Trag the gun that he was missing in his actual box, which is something that I touched upon in this guy's review, but I'm really happy that we got it here. I'll never use it with Muckman, but it's always going to be in Trag's hands now, and I think it looks fantastic. He holds it pretty well. He's got a hard time getting his finger over the trigger, but I can sort of overlook that. It's otherwise a really nice piece, and it very much rounds out this figure for me overall. But there is one other thing in this package that honestly is kind of a surprise for a modern toy. We get a container of slime, and this is done up in, you know, like a radioactive waste container. It's even got a Tropatron Labs sticker on it. It's on the actual package. So this thing has like shrink wrap on it, and the sticker's on the outside. So when you open it, that label's going to go. But that's the place that Muckman worked when he's transformed. So it's one of those referential things I was talking about. So yeah, we're going to open this up and see how this works. I'm really curious about the quality of this. I'm also concerned what it's going to do to these figures, and not to mention how much of a mess I'm going to make with it. But let's open it up and see what's going on. All right, so our slime, our ooze. This stuff is goopy. This is not what I expected at all. So I'm curious how much of a mess I'm going to make. I'm kind of worried about this, like consistency-wise. Like, this stuff is really, really gross, which I suppose is fine. It's kind of the idea here. But at the same time, watch what you do with it. I don't know what it's going to do to dioramas or your shelf or this figure when I just sort of, you know, dump it all over. See, it just sort of like went all over top of him. But, we'll do this. I mean, honestly, I don't even know if they really intend for you to put it on Muckman, because one of his powers was to use his ooze and his slime, and it sort of sapped the turtle's strength and everything. But this is some quality slime. I feel like Pixel Dan right now, using all this slime and this nastiness, but this stuff actually works. It's pretty viscous. I'm sure it's incredibly toxic and unhealthy, but this is a really cool thing to have added. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, honestly, or how necessary it is, but this is cool. It's very much a nostalgia throwback, takes you back to when you were a kid, when you were throwing ooze all over your turtles, ruining your parents' carpet, so I guess also beware of that. But yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I don't know if it was totally necessary, but this is cool. This is fun. This is turtle stuff. So yeah, this guy is pretty solid. I'm having a lot of fun with him, and that's usually the case when it comes to the NECA turtle stuff. I mean, this is among my favorite lines to collect in general, but this guy is one of those kind of non-essential heavy hitters for me, if that makes sense. Like, he's not one that everybody's gonna have to have, but it's one that I'm really happy to have been added to the collection, because it checks off a box for a big name that's not a turtle. Like, a lot of people know who Muckman is, so it's nice to be able to get this guy. It's nice to be able to get a cartoon version of a figure that I really care about when it comes to the vintage line, and then it's nice to be able to get a figure that has one of my aforementioned favorite little buddies, because I just love that kind of stuff when it comes to turtles. It is among the biggest nostalgia kicks for me when it comes to turtles, is to have the little buddies included. Not to mention the fact that this is a pretty solid figure to begin with, who moves well, surprisingly, looks really good, and has some crazy accessories. I'm still not convinced on the ooze necessarily, because I really don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's nice to get that. It's really cool to see they went the extra mile and threw that in, because not only does it fit this particular figure, but it is a hallmark of turtles. So that's going to do it for this look at the NECA Toys cartoon Muckman. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.